Hey there, hope you're doing really, really good. I did a quick run, and this seems to be working. So I'm going to go on to actually do this podcast episode. Well, it was really podcast episodes when I did this in the past, but now it's turning on to more of videos as well. So that said, let's jump right into the first. Actually, it's a comment that I want to talk about first. Which is here from Poida Smith from Today, in fact. And Poida wrote the following, and this is a comment to Insomnia Insight number 250. And Poida wrote the following. Inspiring video. I came across the following from a well-known sleep specialist, PhD in psychology, not an MD. There's a statement about heart rate needed for sleep. Wondering what your take on this is. Many thanks. Okay, so let's read this input from the psychologist. Do not go to the bathroom unless you need to. When someone wakes up in the middle of the night and has to go to the bathroom, they often think, well, since I'm up, I might as well. My advice is to stay in bed unless you really need to go. When you're sleeping, your heart rate is slow and very relaxed. It will remain that way even if you're awake. But when you sit up and then get out of bed, your heart rate will quicken and your automatic nervous system will become more active, which is not conducive to sleep. What does that mean? When you stand, your heart rate goes above 60 and you need a heart rate of 60 or less to go to sleep. Okay, so here's why I think this is such an important question here, Poida. It's because I think this is completely false. I don't believe in this at all. I believe this is just the type of things you always hear that initially may sound like, oh yeah, I definitely shouldn't do that. My heart rate goes up, then I can't sleep. But in reality, it's completely not helpful at all because firstly, there's absolutely no evidence to back that up. Like, how would you show that to be true? But more importantly, here's the really important part with this is that this statement feeds into fear of losing sleep. Fear of losing sleep is one of the major reasons, people have trouble sleeping. And what if you're doing this, if you're trying, like, you wake up and you feel like, I need to stay in the bed, otherwise my heart rate is going to go up. How's that going to be helpful? Obviously, if you're staying in bed to keep your heart rate down, you're going to become anxious and nervous and your heart rate is going to go up, right? But again, more importantly, by staying in bed not to increase your heart rate, you're trying to do something to make yourself sleep. It's a sleep effort. And anything we do with the purpose of, like, producing sleep is called a sleep effort. Anything we try to do to sleep backfires because you can't force sleep. You can't make yourself sleep. You can't do anything to produce sleep. So anything done with that purpose backfires and becomes a sleep effort. And I know nothing about this sleep specialist, but I feel like there's so much advice out there that doesn't make any sense. Another one I heard about was somebody saying, oh, you make sure the temperature in your room is like 67.5 degrees. And that's also so anxiety producing. Like, and I think, one thing that just comes into mind here is, like, if one thinks of, like, sleep as something that's produced by a million different little things, that you got to get every little thing right and then you can sleep, then that is such a huge source of anxiety, because then you think that I got to get the temperature right, I got the environment right, I got to have enough exercise, I got to not eat, I got to do this and this and that. And when you're not sleeping, you think it could be this, it could be that, it could be this, it could be that, but it's not at all like that. Sleep is, in a way, much simpler. We talk about this all the time here on the channel. Like, the only thing that produces sleep is your sleep drive. Your body's need to sleep. That can be blocked by anxiety and stress. But other than that, there's no other mystery to it. So hope this was a helpful point. And this was a really good question. I really appreciate it. All right. So that said, let's let me do this thing where see if I can check in on my live here. Yes, I can see what's going on here. And let's see if I, at the same time, can read these emails. Let's see here. So there are definitely 2 emails I want to go over, and then one I want to comment on. In fact, the one that's going to be a little bit of a quicker comment, let's start with that one. It's from Amy, who wrote me 7 hours ago. And the title says, "No sleep at night for 6 nights straight," and then a really, really sad smiley. And I think I just want to highlight a few things. Amy writes, "So for the past 6 nights, no sleep. I slept maybe 1 or 2 hours in daytime. I have a job that's wrecking me now. I'm desperate. Started a CBTI last night." Uh, and there's some more, but I just I just want to say this immediately to Amy and everybody else out there. And by the way, I haven't said my usual disclaimer, which I want to do. Anything here, nothing is medical advice to any specific person, just my general thoughts and advice. And whatever I say is really to anyone with similar problems to the one that's writing a comment or an email. But that said, for somebody that is in this kind of this point of desperation where you've gone 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nights with like virtually no sleep, and it's like driving you insane, then this is the hard part. When you're at that point of like super desperation, the best thing to do is nothing. It sounds so paradoxical, but I think it's so true. I want to share something that I don't know if I shared before. There was somebody named Kim that wrote me an email. This was a good 8 months ago or something like that. Very similar. 3 nights of no sleep at all. And in my naivete, I thought, well, this person is definitely heading for like a catch up, like a crash. And Kim had said, like, "Do you think I'm gonna like sleep now?" I was like, and this was the time I didn't respond immediately by doing audio video replies. I just wrote an email back and said, you're probably going to crash now, and it's important not to sleep too much when you crash, and it's something of that nature. And then Kim ended up having like a complete sleepless night again. And this highlights how something I learned from Sasha Stevens, and kind of by experience too, which is when things are like super, super desperate, anything you do is very likely to backfire, because you're already at this point of desperation, and then you're grasping for straws, and then you grasp for this straw, and you're like, this is going to help. I hope this is going to help. Please help. This has to help. That produces that extreme pressure and tension that just keeps feeding the insomnia. So when you're at a point of like desperation, that's not a good time. This is like the one time I will say this. That is the one time when it's not good to start anything. Actually, it's not a good start to start time to good. It's not a good time to start cognitive behavioral therapy when you're at that very, very desperate point of desperation. So what should you do? Do nothing. That sounds like very, very bad advice. But anything I say here, I hope that's obvious. Anything I say here is what I believe to really be the best thing to do. So when you're at that point of desperation, the best thing to do is try not to change anything. Try not to do anything new or like that. Try to do what you typically always do, right? And then when things return to the more normal insomnia, whatever pattern or lack of pattern that is, but it's not like this desperation, it's more like the regular pattern, that's when it's time to like start CBTI or start any other evidence-based technique, like I'm just going to mention like mindfulness-based therapy for insomnia, or ACT, which somebody else asked me about, and we'll hopefully have some time to talk about. But yeah, when you're desperate, try not to react. It's super hard, but I really believe that's the best thing to do. And Amy, I'll if not in this episode, then definitely Thursday, I'll make a more complete answer. And by the way, Amy, if you want to write me another email tomorrow or Thursday with like, tell me what happened or more background, then I can give you a more in-depth answer on Thursday. Okay. So that said, there were kind of 2 other emails that I wanted to focus on today. And one was from Anita. Let's see if I can find it. I believe it is right here. Anita, there. So this is from Anita from 3 days ago, and the title is "Fighting with Insomnia." And actually, just a quick comment on that. That's one of the most common things people say. Like, I have this struggle with insomnia. I'm battling. My bed has become a battlefield. I'm fighting insomnia, etc. And that's naturally what it feels like. But a really important inside, which is, again, just like I talked about the one before, this is hard to do and it's hard to make, take this step. But getting to a point where you step away from the fight is really important, because insomnia feeds off the fight. Like, you're trying to do this, you're trying to do that, you're trying to do that. So, well, all that just like grows to insomnia, makes it stronger. It's like when we start backing away, doing less things, giving it less attention, stepping away from the fight, that's when we start making progress. So just a little comment there. All right, so let's read this email. First of all, I want to thank you for what you do. Your channel is by far the best insomnia channel I've come across, and I'm glad to have found it on this miserable day of 7 nights of insomnia. Anita, thank you so much for those words. It means the world, and I'm super glad you found it. I'm a 25-year-old master's student from Finland who's been struggling with insomnia on and off for the past 3 years in total. During the last 1.5 years, I've experienced the worst symptoms. About 2 years ago, I was prescribed mirtazapine and took this medication on and off for several months. It helped me to sleep, but as usual, it did not treat the underlying issue. I stopped taking it and was okay for some time, and only took it when I felt like I needed it. Then a year ago, I changed my environment. When going back home in Finland, I was struck by the worst insomnia I've ever experienced. After 2 weeks of bad quality sleep / no sleep, I was prescribed 50 milligrams ketamine for sleeping. This worked for me well, and I was glad to have found this solution since I moved to Australia and slept well for about 9 months. In Australia, I was able to cut down the dosage to 25, then 12.5, finally 6.25 milligrams. However, even during this time, I had some nights when my insomnia came back, but not for a long period. For the past 5 months or so, I've only taken 6.25 milligrams, and some nights nothing at all. However, after going on a trip about a month ago, my insomnia has struck me again. Each week, I would have at least 4 days when I would have insomnia. The past week has been the worst so far after changing my environment again when coming back home. And I've even increased my ketamine dosage to 30 milligrams and taken temazepam combined on some days. I would describe my insomnia as not being able to drift off to sleep, even when my body and my mind is relaxed / calm. I feel as if subconsciously my mind is not able to shut down, and I can't do anything about it. I sometimes don't even realize that 4 hours pass by in this state while not getting any restorative sleep. It seems my insomnia is always triggered by a change in an environment or a worrying state. I've been watching your videos on CBTI, and I really want to give it a try, especially seeing that everything else has failed me. I also previously felt like CBTI couldn't possibly help me as my insomnia issue is so embedded in me by now. I didn't really get the chance to talk about this with a sleep specialist before, so I'm wondering, do you think CBTI is achievable on my own without a doctor? Sorry for the long email, and thank you so much. Thank you for your positivity, and yeah, thanks so much, Anita. And I want to thank you for sending me this email. And I say this all the time, but it's so helpful, I hope, to you and to anybody else, because there's so many people with a similar situation. So actually, let's start with this last question. I'm wondering, do you think CBTI is available on my own without a doctor? I think having somebody to like a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a coach or somebody like that is always helpful. Of course, that said, a lot of people are successful by other means as well. A lot of people have been doing really well just using the content here on my channel. What else? There are great books out there. There's the one I always recommend, which is Sasha Stevens. Let's see, do I have it here? I don't think so. Sasha Stevens, The Effortless Sleep Method. And then there's another one called Say Goodnight to Insomnia, which apparently is not here either. Well, here is actually The Effortless Sleep Method by Sasha Stevens, which I think is really, really good. And then Say Goodnight to Insomnia by Greg Jacobs. Also good. This one is more of an easier read, I feel, more approachable. Greg Jacobs' books is a little more academic. Both really good. So yeah, I definitely think it's doable. Having a coach or a doctor or someone to talk to is always makes it easier, but definitely doable. Yes. And to again say something that's positive and something I truly believe in is that my experience has been, anyone that I've seen in my clinic or that I've interacted with like back and forth on this YouTube channel, or now that I started doing some coaching on the app, anyone that's like motivated, that does the work, and doesn't give up, does better. I've yet to find somebody that just like that never gave up and didn't feel benefit. I mean, there are some people like there's one person who I interact with on this channel who his name is Tuan, who had done like 6 months by himself and seen like a little bit of improvement gradually. And then I interacted with him quite a while, and it took a long time for him. But guess what? He hasn't emailed me in like a month, which is good. Like he emailed me very frequently and then less and less. And now I haven't heard from him in a while. And the last couple of times I heard from him, he was doing really well. So yeah, it just goes to show that, in my opinion, it's kind of like losing weight, like diet and exercise. It works. It's pretty much guaranteed to work if you do the job. I think it's the same thing with CBTI for insomnia. If you do do what you're supposed to, you just keep going and don't give up, you will do better. So just some encouragement there. That said, looking at this email, I want to briefly, I know I talk about this a lot, so for some people this may be repetitious, but it's really important. The 3P model, which actually Stewart, if you're watching this, you asked me about this, so I'll go over here. 3P model. Some of us are more and some of us are less predisposed to developing insomnia. And so the first P in this 3P model is predisposition. If you have a tendency to worry, if you're like an overthinker, if you kind of overanalyze things, if you're a type A personality, like, you're very structured and organized, a little bit hard to let go, or if you're a night owl, or if you're an early bird, those things are kind of like predisposing factors. They make it a little bit more likely for you to at some point have insomnia. But the important thing is, it doesn't mean you're gonna have it or have to have it. Like, it's just you have that predisposition. But there are millions of people out there that have this predisposition but don't have insomnia. Then there's like so if you have this predisposition, you typically need a triggering factor, a precipitating factor, something that changes in your life that throws your sleep off. But that also is a normal reaction. When we're stressed out, we're supposed to not sleep well, right? But then comes the most important P, which is the perpetuating P, and that's like when we identify insomnia as a problem. When part of your brain goes, you can't sleep, that's a problem. It's a threat to your health, and you got to do something about it. And that's the reaction, the first reaction. And then you may start like trying the sleep mask, the sleep hygiene, the medications, the supplements, and meanwhile things either don't work, like they don't help, and then you may feel like even more desperate, like nothing's working, I'm in a really bad spot, or things quote unquote work, which may actually be even worse, because now your sleep confidence increases. You believe that something is really wrong with you, and you need something from the outside, like a medication, to make you sleep. You can't sleep without it, and then you sleep again. You start not believing that you can sleep, and that's a really, really tricky spot to be in. So what I'm reading in this email from you, Anita, is about someone who had like it sounds like did fine until about 3 years ago, and then there's been like kind of several insults. Like one thing happened, you lose a bit sleep confidence, you build it up a little bit, then you have a new environment, then you lose that sleep confidence again, and you're kind of perpetually in this kind of vulnerable state where sleep gets better, but then anything that happens like just throws it off, and you're kind of back to square one, and it throws off. So getting to a place of permanent good sleep becomes a journey of rebuilding sleep confidence. So how do you do that? Well, I think it sounds like you discovered my channel fairly recently. So I think definitely like go back to the early, the first videos where I go over like the very basics of CBTI, and that will teach you how to like kind of create a sleep window, where you spend less time in bed, and some other basic techniques. But I want to share something that I think is more practical and maybe even more important, and that's and that's a comment on like medications. There's a lot in your email, Anita, about like what dosage you took and how you went down on it, and how you had to go back up, etc. And the first thing I want to share really is like again something I learned from Sasha Stevens. She describes it as follows: that when somebody prescribes you a medication for sleep, there's there's several problems with that, but one of the biggest one is that somebody is implying that there's something wrong with you and that you need something to fix it. And then when you start sleeping better, then it's kind of like your confirmation. Another confirmation is when you stop taking it, then you don't sleep good at all. So you end up feeling like you can't sleep. And again, your sleep confidence is really down there. But I think something that is a really good first step is just knowledge of the fact that the only thing that can produce sleep is our own natural sleep drive, our own bodies. Even somebody that's taking a medication, well, that medication is simply maybe doing one or both of two things. Either it's kind of sedating, it's taking like some anxiety off, and that can maybe, allow you to sleep, but it's not producing sleep, but it allows you to sleep. Or it's the belief in it too. Like you believe something's going to work, and then it boosts your sleep confidence. But again, medications cannot make us sleep. They can't produce sleep. So I think that's a really valuable insight. Now, second one that I think is really an important one too is that CBTI works really well if somebody's taking a medication. But if they're taking it like as prescribed every single night, same dosage, same time, or if somebody's not taking medications at all, it works really good too. When it becomes not effective is if somebody's taking medication conditionally, meaning somebody says, I really don't want to be on this medication. I'm going to try not to take it. And then like they go to bed and they're like, all right, it's 11 o'clock. I'm going to try not to take it. And then now, well, it's 11:45. Ugh, what's going to happen? Am I not going to sleep at all? What if I took half of it? How about if I take some tonight but not tomorrow? Or what if it is in that whole process of deciding if you're going to take it or not creates so much tension, anxiety, and pressure that really, really disrupts sleep. So I think, the best strategies is for somebody that's on medication. What I do in clinic now, I think is the best strategy is to decide upon, okay, I'm going to take this dosage, I'm going to take it this time, no matter what, for the next 3 weeks or something like that, something very set, and then start working on the CBTI. And then once sleep confidence starts to come back, once you're feeling like, you know what, I start seeing that I'm falling back asleep quicker. I have pretty regular sleep. I'm not so worried about sleep anymore. Those, like, I made a recent video about like the 3 early signs of like how CBTI is working for you. If you start having those 3 signs and things are getting better and you're recovering your sleep confidence, then at some point, either maybe you take your medications for, without a particular end date, and you're happy and things are working for you, good. Or you decide, I'm going to come off these medications, and then that becomes a same thing, a decision. Like, I'm going to come off it like this. This is my taper down schedule, and I'm not going to challenge it. No matter what, I'm just going to do it. Or, or again, you may stay on medications for a couple of years until you feel ready to do that. But again, most important thing is not to use medications conditionally, I feel. And then another question I think becomes here, it seems like with you, Anita, that traveling or changing environment has always been a trigger. And I don't think we need to spend too much time here on this actually, but a question I often get is like, okay, now I feel like overall I'm sleeping better, but when I travel, I still sleep really poorly. Well, then it becomes I think a good strategy in that scenario becomes building sleep confidence with the fact that you sleep well at home, and just thinking about how, like, there's nothing different in the oxygen or the ambient, nothing else is different. I'm just in a different environment. I can sleep. I know I can sleep anywhere. That's kind of one way to go about that. And second one, to try to basically, when you are traveling, try to find evidence that you can sleep. Like, maybe you're traveling for 2 weeks and you only slept good 2 nights. That's terrible, of course, but you did sleep well 2 nights, which means you can sleep well even when you're traveling. Finding evidence that you can sleep well even when environment has changed becomes another kind of key to overcoming that part of it. But again, overall, like, once sleep confidence grows, it grows in all areas, even First, it typically grows, when you're home, stable environment, and then, but when your sleep becomes really gross, that can spill over into even when you're traveling in new environments and things like that. So, Anita, I hope this was helpful, and please follow-up questions, please email them to me, and again, yeah, hope you do really well, and I believe you will. And so this is Finland, and we're gonna stay in the Scandinavian area, and which I think I shared this on the channel before, but I grew up in Sweden, so been to Finland many times, and never been to Iceland, but that's where we're heading next. Let's see here. So we have an email here from Maria, which is from 14 hours ago. Let's read it. Hi, Daniel. First of all, thank you so much for your content. Your channel is pure gold. That makes me so happy to read that. Thanks so much, Maria. Really happy to read that. I recently experienced several nights of insomnia due to what I think are sleep starts occurring throughout the night and not being able to fall asleep at all. These nights have become in between others that are perfectly fine, so I cannot find any reason as for why this could be happening. The first night was absolutely terrifying. I felt as if I stopped breathing, only to take a breath and feeling a tingling sensation all over my body, including my face and heart racing. After an entire night of this, I called my friend who's a sleep research specialist. She told me not to worry. I called my friend who's a medical doctor, and she too told me not to worry about it. I didn't believe them, so I went to my GP, and she told me not to worry. But I've now since had several horrible nights. Sorry if I'm laughing, but it's just like everybody's telling you not to worry, and it just came out as I expected that, and then you said it right. But I have now since had several horrible nights of trying to fall asleep, only to experience this uncomfortable sensation of almost falling asleep to being wide awake. Yeah. On nights I managed to get a little bit of sleep, I seem to go from this situation of taking a breath, tingling sensation. It's a bit less than the first time it happened, and racing heart to having jerks. And when they happen several times, I'm able to fall. And when they happen several times, I'm able to fall asleep. I'm so tired and worried, and I know it is not helping the situation, but I feel so alone in this. Sleeping has always been my favorite thing to do. It has gotten me through some awful bouts of anxiety and worry, but now I can't even go to sleep when I feel blue. That was my go-to method to unwind. I have 3 kids and a loving husband, and I refuse to accept this as the new norm. Is what I describe being common, or am I a unique snowflake? Thank you, and for the content. Maria, it's interesting. When I kind of just skimmed your email before, I saw this, am I a unique snowflake? And I thought I was going to say, no, you're not. And that's exactly what I'm going to say. No, you're not. But I thought about it differently. I didn't realize this was going to be about sleep starts. So first of all, thanks for reaching out. And I have several things I want to share. I'm trying to think about what's the most helpful place to start. You know what? I wish I could. I don't have my phone on me, but okay. There's been several people asking me about very, very similar things here, and that's why I'm thinking about, like, what episodes were those? How can I do this? Oh yeah, in the description to this video, if not tonight but tomorrow, I will post some other episodes that are about exactly this, so you will know that this is very common, very common. Now, your friends are all right. They are correct. There's nothing to worry about. But as we know, that in itself is not very helpful. It's kind of when I use the analogy of, like, if somebody tells you, don't think about a pink elephant, guess what? You think about a pink elephant, right? So when somebody tells you, don't worry about that, you can't decide not to worry about that. That's impossible. So with that said, let's talk about, like, why these things happen. I think that's really helpful. I think we've all, or most of us, I believe almost everyone, has experienced what's called a hypnic jerk. And that's when we're just, we're about to fall asleep, and then suddenly we jerk. And we don't know exactly why those happen, but it's related to that transitioning from wakefulness to sleep. It's some kind of like a faulty transitioning or something like that that produces that sleep jerk. And they can be, legs, whole body, not uncommon. Now, sometimes people have multiple ones, and it sounds like, let's really, I think that's happening to you. You've had kind of a series of them, and you've also had this like tingling sensation all over your body, including face and heart racing, right? And so why does this happen? Well, you mentioned also that you find no reason for it. So where should we start? I think let's start with hyperarousal. So I'm happy you've consulted with doctors. Again, this is not a medical advice. If you're worried about your health, you have to see your doctor, etc. Right? That said, when I hear something like this, I immediately think hyperarousal. And so what is that? Well, hyperarousal is when your mind is kind of like one step below worrying, because when we worry about something, we know it. When we're anxious about something, which I feel is like maybe one step higher than worrying, we definitely know about it. But hyperarousal is sneaky, because we can feel like completely normal. We feel like and nothing is going on, but the hyperarousal is that you just still have some degree of worrying subconsciously that you're not even aware of, and they can produce all kinds of things. Some classic things like tingling, like jerks, twitching, kind of like that tension, that pain, the sleep jerks, the starts, all that stuff is produced by hyperarousal. And now, and I hope that helps you feel like this is nothing unusual. It happens a lot, and hyperarousal is the culprit. And now, I felt there was a couple more things. Yeah, actually, let me do this one. It's funny because I thought about this today, and I was kind of looking for. I was thinking, should I do an episode on this? But now I can bring it up here. I'm sure a lot of us have experienced, at least those of us that carry a cell phone in our pocket. I don't know if you do this, Maria, but I'm sure it's very common among those of us who do that. That you have a cell phone in your pocket, and then you're like, whoa, that must have been a message or something. You check it, and nothing had happened. It's just like, but you're sure you felt something, right? And I realized today that that's very similar to these like hyperarousal triggered events, meaning when our mind and body is like tuned in to feel something, kind of looking for something, it can make stuff up out of the blue. That didn't happen. That it didn't happen, but I'm sure I felt something. And that's another thing hyperarousal does. It's like things that we normally wouldn't even notice, like a tingling or twitch or something, suddenly becomes this huge thing. Like we feel it so intensely. Okay, so that's another thing I want to comment on, like hyperarousal there, what you can do. Now, so what should one do in this scenario? Well, your friends are all right. Like it's nothing to worry about. But again, we said that in itself is not helpful. But I think it is good to know that hyperarousal and all these like transitional sleep events are kind of like insomnia in a micro version of insomnia. I mean, the more attention they get, the more we try to. Here's a good one. You say, I cannot find any reason for this. Well, the more we try to find the reason, the more we try to figure out what's going on, the stronger these things become. So like trying not to think about why they're happening is really helpful. And other than that, it becomes like a game of shifting attention. Like you have 3 kids. I'm sure you have things that you enjoy to do, something you have to do. Like doing things that are like enjoyable, maybe something that's new, something that takes attention away, that I believe is the key. The tricky part, of course, is like when we're about to go to bed, it's hard to like keep attention away from sleep when you're just about to sleep. But still, I think it becomes, a game of like watching a Netflix show at night and just like going to bed when you're really sleepy, or like just doing things during the day that may be so engaging that you don't even think about these events. And at least a couple more things that I think are encouraging is like, I've never had anyone that that complain of these things for a long time. They tend to be very intense, but not stay that long. And you mentioned here, like, it's a bit less than the first time it happened. So I think that's a very encouraging first thing. So Maria, I hope this is helpful. Any follow-up questions, please email me again. And thanks again. And I think you got this. I think you're going to do really well. That said, let's see how we're doing on time here. Going back to my face in my live here, 35 minutes. It's fine. We have more time, which is really, really cool, because there was one more email then that I want to talk about. And I think this was a pretty long one, but also a very good one, because it went over a lot of, I felt it was a good email to talk about, like the kind of back to basics, like something like that. So this is from 9 hours ago from Stewart. And let's read this. Hi, Daniel. After watching a podcast from Insomnia coach, whom I discovered from someone in a Facebook Insomnia group, I found you. The podcast was great, and I found it very interesting, informative, and helpful. And I have a lot of respect for yourself and Martin's dedicated work to help those with insomnia and to help spread the word. Thank you. It was super nice to hear this. I'm nearly halfway through your book, Why We Don't Sleep. Found it good. Thanks so much. That's amazing. Now for my story. I've been struggling with insomnia ever since my beloved pet passed away in October last year. It all started around November. I've never been an amazing sleeper, but usually after an hour or two, I would drift off and sleep peacefully through the night. After around 3 months of insomnia, I went to the docs and asked for help. They prescribed me with 50 milligrams of mirtazapine, which is an antidepressant, but can help those with insomnia. They worked a treat and knocked me out. I had been taking them on and off until August, and now I realized they were just papering over cracks and not sorting the root issue. In August, they stopped working altogether, and that set my anxiety and panic up big time. But hey, I was about to start a new job in September, getting up at 6, 7 a.m. and working longer days. If that won't tire me out at bedtime, nothing will. Here we are, my third week of working, and I've slept relatively soundly 2 nights in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, so only 2 relatively good nights. Got it. For weeks, I've just been tossing and turning all night, and I've been getting headaches on and off. I went to the docs just before I started working, and he said, best not to prescribe anything, as the sleeping pills are highly addictive, which I already knew, despite the previous GP I had trying to comfort me by saying there's no shame in taking them. Okay. I then went a week ago, and the other doctor told me the same thing. Anyway, I'm trying hard to sort my sleep hygiene out, going off all electronics 9:15 to 9:30 p.m., drinking herbal sleep teas, taking 5-HTP tablets, reading before bed, etc., to no avail. Yet save one night. I've tried many things before, such as passion flower, night owl, night nurse, 5-HTP sleep sprays, lavender oil, sleep cream, CBD oil, trying to improve sleep hygiene, you name it. Also, when I read in bed, it does help me feel really tired, and I feel my eyelids close, and I know I'm seconds away from sleep. But as soon as I turn the lights off and put the book on the floor, my mind is awake again. It's so frustrating. Why is it so sensitive? I think as well that subconsciously my mind is almost surprised I'm sleepy and tries to make my mind race, keep up, probably down to anxiety, wondering if the sleepiness will be enough to help me sleep properly. Sometimes I wonder when I toss and turn if I sleep at all, but surely I'm getting at least an hour or 2, and otherwise wouldn't literally be impossible to function on so little sleep for so long, right? I noticed you mentioned ACT, the 3P, paradoxical insomnia, some other things I haven't heard of. Would like to know more, get some advice from you. I wait your reply with anticipation. Your help would greatly appreciate it. Any time, Stewart. Thank you for sending me this email. And we have actually, in this episode, we already talked about the 3P model, and like kind of applying that to your situation here. It sounds like, yes, you said, I've never been an amazing sleeper. You have that predisposition, right? But you were doing okay. And then your pet passed away in October. That's the precipitating factor. And then basically like being then like identifying insomnia as a problem, taking medications and all the other things are kind of like the perpetuating factors, the things that actually fuel insomnia, keeps it going. And we've already talked about medications in this episode, and we've seen how the main problem, in my opinion, is like they reduce your sleep confidence. Like you believe you can sleep without them. And now, but I think what's really, honestly, what I feel encouraged by in this email, Stewart, is that you haven't done CBTI, which is really the best thing. And I think there's a lot we can learn from your email. And one is the sleep hygiene. So there are kind of different schools of thought when it comes to sleep hygiene and kind of, in the insomnia community, let's say. I think most people that are in like CBTI's counselors or in insomnia world will say that it's not important, but it can help, something like that. What we definitely know is that studies show that sleep hygiene by itself does not help with insomnia. Everybody knows that. But some people feel like, well, it can still be good. And then there's people like myself who feel like, not at all. I really think sleep hygiene is a problem. And the root cause of that we already talked about, which is nothing can produce sleep except your natural sleep drive. Anything we do to kind of like try to produce sleep becomes a sleep effort. And when we try to force sleep or produce sleep, it backfires. So all the stuff like trying to keep the room cool and dark and using a sleep mask and not eating before going to bed and not exercising too much, all the things are essentially sleep efforts. Like we're trying to produce sleep, which just produces that tension and pressure and expectation, anticipation that makes sleep impossible. So that's about sleep hygiene. And going off electronics, for example, classic, like everybody does that. No evidence whatsoever that it works. Like screen light and light like that has none to minimal, I believe none, but just to not offend anybody, I'll say none to minimal impact on sleep. And drinking herbal teas, taking 5G reading, all that are sleep efforts. Like you're trying to sleep, and that really is one of the big problems. Like when we're trying to sleep, wanting to sleep, begging for sleep, praying for sleep, hoping to sleep, negotiating for sleep, all that puts so much pressure on sleep. Like that is what produces insomnia, really. So that's a huge thing here. Now, what I do feel, we haven't talked about it in detail. You haven't mentioned detail, but it sounds like you have to get up at 6 or 7 a.m. and you turn off all electronics 9:15 to 9:30 p.m., which is something like 10 hours, right? Yeah. About 10 hours before you have to get up, you kind of start getting ready for sleep. And although I don't know what time you go to bed, the first step really when it comes to like getting over insomnia using CBTI techniques is spending less time in bed, and in my opinion, that includes like getting ready for bed. So let's say you have to get up at, let's say 6 and you have trouble sleeping. For most people, starting with like 6.5 hours or maybe 7 hours in bed is good. So that would be something like get up at 6 and be like religious about that. Like get up at 6 every single morning, and then not go to bed before, let's say 11. And don't start like a bedtime ritual or anything like a routine like too early. I would in fact say like just set it and forget it. Like getting up at 6, I'm not going to go to bed for 11. I'm going to make myself stay up at least until 11. If I don't feel sleep at 11, I'm going to wait. And the natural reaction to that may be like, whoa, wait, I need more sleep, better sleep. How's that going to help? But it becomes about the net again. Like if you cast a wide net, like let's see how much sleep I can get. That's another sleep effort. You're trying to get sleep. And it's like you say here, sometimes I wonder if I don't sleep at all, but I must be getting some sleep, right? Well, if you cast out a wide net and you allot like 10 hours or 9 hours or even 8 hours for sleep becomes fragmented and superficial and poor, versus if you spend less time in bed, you get that deep, juicy, refreshing, rejuvenating quality sleep, which is so important. So I think Stewart, like really, I think with just like doing the, starting kind of with episode 1 here and like working through maybe the first 15, 20 episodes or something like that, where I go over the basics and then just kind of here and like pick and choose and listen to the stuff here that you think is helpful. I think that will help a lot. And I want to add one more thing. ACT. Where do I have that book? I think you have it right here. The Sleep School by Dr. Guy Meadows. This is a lot of ACT in this, but this is where I get most of what I know about it from. And to be honest with you, I feel like ACT is like, it's a really cool, interesting take on insomnia, but I don't think it's at all as, for most people, not at all as effective as CBTI. But kind of just to give you an idea, the kind of central thought in with ACT is that we shouldn't kind of confront or engage with thoughts. So if you're in bed, they basically don't do much sleep restriction. They say like, well, you can go to bed, and then when you feel anxious, then don't react to it. Just be like, oh, here you are, anxiety. I've met you before. I know, something like that. You kind of like look at your emotions from the outside. That is kind of like a technique there, which is, I think you can work, but I think it's harder, much harder than CBTI. And paradoxical insomnia. Paradoxical insomnia is basically just when you significantly underestimate how much you sleep. It's classically like you think you slept 2 hours, you actually slept 5.5, something like that. And the thing is, like, pretty much everyone with insomnia has some degree of paradoxical insomnia. People with insomnia generally tend to underestimate how much they sleep, and people that don't have insomnia tend to overestimate it. But if you just kind of browse my channel, you will find episodes on paradoxical insomnia. Was there anything more? Well, I want to add one more thing, which I think is, again, something I say quite a lot, but I think is really helpful, which is when we have like obligations during the day, like a job, for example, and we feel like it's really important that I get good sleep so I can do my job, that is completely understandable, but it creates that problem of pressure again. And I feel like the key to that is finding evidence that there was that one time where I only slept 3.5 hours and actually did fine at work, or there was a time when I slept 6.5 hours and I felt terrible. Finding that evidence that not everything hinges on sleep, other things play a big role as well, and that you can do your work even if you don't necessarily sleep great. That can become, even if it's just that one time, that can become the evidence that proves to you that I can do well even on less sleep, and then you fear that loss of sleep less, and you go on to sleep really much better. So yeah, Stewart, thank you so much. And I just add, it was a really actually kind follow-up email from Maria that I just thought about as I was speaking before. She said, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You're so generous with your time and work. Do you have a Patreon site? So sweet. That's so sweet, Maria, to think of that. And I want to say, I just want to add then that I don't have a Patreon site. Everything I do here for the Insomnia Insight project is always going to be free. I'm never going to try to monetize my audience or ask for money or anything like that. But I, of course, have my selfish thing. The selfish thing. Well, it's not entirely selfish. It's also, I want to help people, but I'm also hoping that this will become something that maybe will lead to me one day being self-employed and just focusing entirely on insomnia. Is my app, Bedtime with a Y. If somebody out there has an iPhone and want to check it out, I think it's really good. For it has a curriculum where you learn about insomnia. It's all the stuff I talk about here, no secrets, but it's just more like laid out, like more structured and like more of a plan, if you will. And there's coaching as well. I'm the coach right now, so I coach people. So yeah, if you want to check it out or have a friend or want to tell somebody about it, that would be super helpful. So that said, let us end this live session. And Amy, I kind of purposely didn't go over email because in detail because of what I said, trying not to react right now. I think that's really the best strategy. And with that said, yeah, thank you so much for comments, for engagement, for being so positive, and I'm thankful, really thankful for this. So I will end here, and I shall be back tomorrow. Until then, take it easy.